got two sections we're going to learn. We've got two sections we're going to learn, and then we're going to have a mini little quiz. I'm not going to call it a test because it's not an assessment grade, but like at the end of the week, you'll have a little, not a homework quiz either. It's not like you'll have homework, but it'll be worth 5 homework grades, and it'll be a quiz. So, because there's only two things we're going to learn, what we learned today and then what we will learn tomorrow. So we're going to go through that right now. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to solve quadratic equations, and actually that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow too, but these are the easier kind. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finding the x-intercepts of each of these equations. Each of these will graph a quadratic, or will graph a parabola. For an example, let's say we have this parabola right here. Say we have a parabola and it looks something like this. Okay, it has two solutions, or two zeros. And what I mean by that are where the graph crosses the x-axis. Those are the points we're going to be finding today, without even having to graph. We're going to go through and solve an equation just like we did with linear equations when we just solved for x and we just had an x. We're going to do the same thing, except we're going to be solving for x squared. Now, we could have two solutions. Another way this could look is we could have just one solution. We could have a graph that just touches the x-axis in one place and just has one solution. So we could have two solutions, one solution, or none, because maybe we have a graph that looks like this. Starts here and goes up, opens upward. Maybe we have a graph like that. Does that have any solutions? Doesn't cross the x-axis at all, right? Okay. Yes, Quincy?
Can you go down?
Yeah, we could. We could also have one that looks like this, right?
Yeah.
That would also have no solution. Okay? So now I'm going to show you how to do this without having to graph, but then I am going to ask you to sketch a short little graph on each of these. But letter A says 2x squared minus 98 equals 0. So we solve this just like we would a regular equation, any kind of normal equation. We want to get x squared by itself. Okay, so what do we do first?
Add 98.
Yeah, we get rid of the negative 98. So we're going to add 98 to both sides. This is going to be just like solving equations. There will be one difference at the end, and I'll show you what to do there. 2x squared equals 98. Then what?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2 first, right? So we get x squared equals 98 divided by 2 is 49.
Then we get the square root.
Yeah, that's the only difference. We get it down to where we have just the x squared on the left all by itself and then a number on the right. And then what we do is we take the square root of both sides, because to cancel out a square, we take a square root. So these cancel and you get x equals. Now here's where, normally we say just 7. In these cases, though, we want the negative answer also. I don't know if you remember, we talked about these a long time ago, square roots, where there's a negative and a positive answer. So it's going to be a plus or minus 7. So that means on the x-axis, this parabola crosses at negative 7 and positive 7. So when I ask you to sketch a graph, this is all I want from you. So on your homework, you are going to have to sketch a graph. What I will want you to do is put 7 and negative 7 on your x-axis. We'll just put negative 7, positive 7. And then we're just going to connect. We're just going to make a parabola that goes through here. We don't know exactly where the vertex is or anything, but we know it probably looks something like this, where it goes through your negative 7 and positive 7. I don't care where it crosses down here. It doesn't matter. I just want to know that you know what it is you're finding. Okay, so that's how you solve these. Let's look at the next one. We want to get x squared by itself. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. And we get x squared equals 0. Because negative 16 plus 16 is 0, right? And then we take the square root of both sides. So we get x equals, now on this case, it's 0. So we don't have a plus or minus 0, because 0 is just 0. So we have one solution, and it's x equals 0. Does that mean what? Okay, so on our graph then, what we would do for this is we know that it only touches the x-intercept at x equals 0. Where's x equals 0? It's like right there in the middle, isn't it? So it looks probably something like this. Because so that means that parabola only touches the x-axis in one spot, not two. Okay. All right, so let's look at the next one. Any questions so far? Okay, letter C. We have to get g squared by itself. So how do we begin? Good. Subtract 32 from both sides. So we get 2g squared equals negative 32. Divide both sides by 2, and we get g squared equals negative 16. Now, I don't know, how many of you have worked ahead at all? Okay, what happens when you put, because see, what would be the next step, Bernice?
Find the square root.
The square root, okay. Somebody put square root of negative 16 in their calculator and tell me what happens. Square root of a negative number, see what happens.
Domain error.
Exactly, okay. You cannot have a square root of a negative number. So if you come to this step and you're trying to take a square root of a negative number, any ideas on what that might be?
Change it. Wait.
No.
Four.
No. We can't change it to a positive.
No solution.
Just be negative 16?
Nope.
No
No
solution.
change?
No solution. It's a no solution. So that means, what that means is it does not, this parabola does not touch your x-axis. Okay, this does not touch your x-axis. So it probably looks something like maybe this.
So you'd still have to graph it?
Yeah. Just, you know, sketch me a parabola that doesn't touch your x-axis. We know these open up. Actually, all three of these open up, and I believe on your homework they do. How do you guys remember how to know if it opens up or down?
If it's positive. Yeah.
Positive or negative at the beginning, yeah. And all of these are positive. I'm pretty sure the ones on your homework are too. So if it's a no solution, it'll just sketch me something like this. I just want to know that you know what your solutions are. Example 3. Guess I'll edit that out of my video there. Okay. That's okay. All right. A city is planning a circular duck pond for a new park. The depth of the pond will be 4 feet, and the volume will be 20,000 feet cubed. Find the radius of the pond to the nearest tenth of a foot. Use the equation volume equals pi r squared times h. V is volume. V represents volume. R represents radius. H represents depth. So, what do we do here?
Okay. For V, plug in the volume.
Yeah, we're going to plug in the things they give us. So we have our formula V equals pi r squared times h. Okay, so then for volume, we're going to plug in 20,000 equals pi r squared, and then what do we put in for h?
4.
4. Okay. Now, all three of these things are being multiplied. Pi, r squared, and 4. So what we can do to make this a really quick process, what do we need to get by itself? The r squared we need to get by itself. So a really quick process to do that would be pi and 4. If we divide both sides by 4 pi, I just flipped them around. Same thing as pi times 4. If I divide both sides by 4 pi, that will give me that the pi's will cancel and the 4's will cancel. And that'll give me r squared on the right side of that equation. So then we just need to do 20,000 divided by 4 pi in your calculator. You have a pi button in your calculators. Also, when you're putting it into your calculator, you need to put parentheses around the 4 and the pi. So you need to do 20,000, divide button, parenthesis, 4 pi, close your parenthesis, and tell me what we get here.
So, like,
1,591
91.
point, give me 3 decimal places.
549.
549, okay. So that's what we get when we divide 20,000 by 4 times pi. We're not done yet. No, because what do we need to do, Mariella? Square root, yeah. Take the square root to get the actual radius. And it says to round the radius to the nearest tenth of a foot. So tenth of a foot is what we're rounding to. So take the square root of 1,591.549.
And it is 39.89.
So 39.9 to the round
Yeah.
to the nearest 10. So 39.9 feet is the radius of that pod.
Do we have to put that on a graph thingy?
Mm-mm. You don't get what? And again, on this problem, we technically, the answer to this square root of this number is plus or minus 39.9. Okay? Yeah, 39.9. But when we're talking about a word problem, when we're talking about the radius of a pond, can we have a negative answer?
No.
The negative answer doesn't make sense, so we would only choose to use the positive. Okay? But in every other situation, you do need to do plus or minus.
Like on a real life situation, how do that?
Well, it depends on what it is. You know, you have to kind of think for yourself, is
So
it...
it's working with something like area, right?
Right, if it's working with distance, you know you want a positive. So, okay, your assignment for today is page 567, numbers 10 through 20 even. There's a formula on the board over here to the right where it says A equals S squared. That's the formula you're going to use for number 20 on the homework.